Sorry I'm a little bit late. I will wait and let some people get online before beginning. If you've not joined us before, then just to let you know, my name's Zoe Clark. I'm an osteopath and have joined NASS during the COVID-19 outbreak to provide advice and support for people living with AS during this difficult time. As always, the video will remain on the page afterwards. We'll also upload it onto our website as well in the new My AS My Life section, along with a blog post with all the information and links to some further resources too. So if you'd like to, please do ask questions or leave comments as we go along. Please do share with people things that have helped you with your fatigue, which is the topic of today's video. So if you want to get in touch with me afterwards, I'm able to provide free advice and exercise advice. So do drop me an email, zoe@nass.co.uk. I have put my email address in the description of the video, along with the helpline number as well. So do give us a call if you need any advice or support. Hi Tommy, thanks for joining us. I'll keep an eye on the questions and comments as we go through, but what I may try out doing is just answering the questions at the end and going through them all in one go. So do drop a comment or a question in there and I'll go through them at the end. So as I said, today's topic is all about fatigue. So it's a really big topic, but hopefully I'll be sharing some advice and some tips and tricks that you'll find helpful. So we'll get started then. Firstly, to actually define fatigue, fatigue is not just tiredness, it's not just the effect of a short-term lack of sleep, it is a feeling of overwhelming exhaustion. It is really commonly goes alongside with AS and it can have a huge impact in your life. So as I said, it is a really big topic, but hopefully I'll be sharing some advice and some tips and tricks that you'll find helpful. So fatigue can be due to the actual condition itself, or it can be a knock-on effect from the pain and from the stiffness that can affect your sleep as well. So I'll be discussing the different ways that we can help manage that too. There are lots of things that you can do to help manage your fatigue, so hopefully I'll give you some ideas through here. Got a few people joining us. Hi Jan, hi Anne, hi Claire, thank you very much for joining. So firstly, in terms of the different causes of fatigue, as I said, because of the different causes, you may well find that you manage it in different ways. Firstly, active inflammation from AS can cause fatigue. You can also get anemia due to that inflammation as well, so that's something that is important to check for. Also, chronic pain, particularly at night if it's affecting your sleep, can lead to fatigue, and also depression can have physical symptoms such as fatigue as well, so that's also something that is important, is diagnosed and managed well. And then also muscle weakness, if you're not doing as much because of your pain or because of your symptoms and your muscles get weaker, then when you are going to be more active, it can be more tiring and cause more fatigue when you do go on to do that as well. I'll just scroll down on the comments so I can keep an eye on them as they come in. Oh wow, lots of people joining us, thank you. Okay, great. So firstly, as I said, active inflammation from AS causing fatigue is something that we definitely need to get checked out and get managed. Like a lot of symptoms with AS, it can be easy to kind of gloss over them and not mention them to your rheumatologist, but it's really important because your rheumatologist may be able to offer lots of advice and support to actually help with fatigue. So it's definitely something worth discussing with them if you do feel like it is related to your AS. And also if your fatigue is severe, it may be a sign that your AS isn't as well controlled as it could be. Again, the rheumatologist is the best person to discuss this with because they may well change the way they're managing things, and that can have a big impact on the fatigue as well. Your rheumatologist can also refer to occupational therapy, and they're specialists and real experts in giving you advice in terms of modifying things, your activities, and giving advice in terms of things around the home that can help manage lots of symptoms, including fatigue too. Also, some hospitals do offer classes on managing fatigue, so it may be that your rheumatologist can refer you to one of these classes too, which could be really helpful. So as well, when to see your GP, if you do get new or very severe fatigue, it's worth seeing your GP because they may be able to offer some advice and be able to test for different health conditions that can cause that. As I mentioned, anemia related to inflammation can happen with AS as well, and that can cause a lot of tiredness and other symptoms, and it's very easily treated as well, so you definitely see your GP to check your iron levels and make sure that you haven't got anemia. And then in terms of pain medications, you can find that some pain medications can cause sleepiness and drowsiness afterwards. So if you're experiencing this, then definitely see a pharmacist for a medication review because they can go through all your medications and look at the doses you're taking and when you're taking them, and they may be able to give some practical advice in terms of changing what time of day that you take the tablets to help with that. Or if they think that it's something that means you may need to change your medication, they'll be able to recommend who to see, such as your rheumatologist or your GP if necessary. So there are lots of people out there who can help with this. As I said, fatigue can affect your mental health a lot, and mental health and physical health really go hand in hand. You can't separate the two, and they can often have an impact on each other. So if you find that you're worried that you may have symptoms of depression, or you have that diagnosed, or if you're just generally finding things difficult, then please do speak to your GP or one of the many mental health charities across the UK, because there's lots of advice and support out there to help with that, and that's really important. So firstly, the biggest topic really in fatigue and managing fatigue is going to be pacing. It's something that I think people can gloss over quite easily, but I'll go through it in quite a lot of detail because it can be really important, it can be really helpful, but you do have to do it properly and you do have to do it really consistently as well. So pacing is all about balancing your activities and your rest in order to help manage your fatigue over a long period of time. One of the best ways to do this is to have some practical tips, which I'll go through. And as I said, just doing them regularly and really sticking with it in order to get the improvement long term. It is very difficult, and it is very easy to get into that boom and bust cycle. So where you have a good day and you go and do loads of activity, and then that means the next day or the next few days, you're then in bed having to rest and recover from that. I'll show you one of the NASS guides. This is our Living with AS Fatigue guide. I have there's a link to that in the blog that I'll share after this live, but you can download it on the website. If you just go and have a look at the website, even if you go into the search box and put in fatigue, there's a link to download this booklet. But it's got a really good explanation of the boom and bust cycle with some great images. So I'll just find those to show you. Here we are. So the first image here is that boom and bust cycle. So you're getting those peaks and those troughs, so where you could go and do loads of activity and then have the trough of energy afterwards because you've then overdone it. It also then goes to show the effect of this. So actually over time, if you're in that boom and bust cycle where you're doing loads of activity and then you're really suffering for it for days afterwards, actually over time that is going to affect you negatively. So over time it's going to deplete your energy stores, you're going to lose some of your fitness as well, and actually over time you'll be able to do less and less without then hitting that fatigue wall. So as you can see in this graph here, if over time you do that where you're getting those peaks and troughs, gradually you're going to get that reduction in your ability to then be more active. So it's really important to be pacing regularly. The next graph they then show is the effect of that pacing regularly along here. If you do pace regularly, then you get that window of the amount of energy that you have and the amount that you can do. And even on those good days and bad days, you're going to be fluctuating, but within that window, and it's going to be a lot more consistent. Long term, this is really helpful because then it means that you can actually plan ahead. It's a little bit more consistent in terms of how much energy you have, and it's easier to know how much is too much and be able to manage your activities and your energy levels that way. Of course, it is really important to say the nature of AS is that symptoms will fluctuate. You will get flares, and sometimes you'll get flares for absolutely no reason. So you may well be managing your activities really well, but you'll still get that fluctuation and that flare-up of fatigue. And the really important thing is just to be kind to yourself. So don't beat yourself up if you do get a flare-up, and even if you do find that you've overdone it one day and you're then feeling the effect the next day, just be kind to yourself. You know, we're all human, we can try as hard as we can to be consistent with that, but it is natural that we'll get some days that we're not going to be managing it as well. So just, you know, ride with it, sit with it, rest, recover, and then just keep aiming for that good pacing in the long term. But definitely just be kind to yourself. Don't feel too pressured to be doing it perfectly 100% of the time. In terms of when you're looking at possibly changing your activities, or whether you're managing your activities very well, again in the booklet, at the back of the booklet, there's a really great way that you can track your activity. So there are 4 weeks worth of days there. So it's got a chart with the day of the week and then with the time along there, and it's got little boxes that represent an hour of time. At the bottom of the page there's a key, so it's all colour coded. So whenever you do any activity for around an hour or half hour, you can then colour in that box with the relevant activity. So red is for a high energy activity, orange is for a low energy activity, green is for rest and relaxation, and then blue is for sleep. So as you colour in those squares and track how you're spending your days and your time, you're able to look at something in a much more sort of distanced way. Over a period of a week or 4 weeks, you can notice patterns much better. So you may well find that actually you're doing too many high energy activities with too few rest periods. You may be that you're doing a whole block of high activity and then having to spend the rest of the day resting. And it might help you just bring in some more practical tips. So you may find that actually you could break that high energy activity down into a few lower energy activities and split them up with those break periods. So then you're able to be doing the same activity, but without that real knock-on effect afterwards. So definitely take a look at the guide on our website and have a go at that diary. If you do find that you fill in the diary and you're not really sure what to then do to make those practical changes, do give us a call on the helpline or drop me an email. As I said, that my email address is in the description of the video, because we're more than happy to help you discuss that and look at ways to manage your AS and see if there's anything you can be doing to help with that energy management. So the first thing that you can do as well, once you've done that diary and you've got a good idea of the activities you're doing and how you're spending that energy, is looking at the different activities and tasks and then really prioritize them. You can look at them in terms of what is a high priority or an urgent task, or you can look at them in terms of how much energy they each take. But once you prioritize them, you may find that on a particular day, you'll be able to look at your to-do list and find that one really important task that you can do first, so that then you can then have the rest of the day, if you need to, in the more low urgency or lower energy tasks that you can do afterwards, so that you're managing that energy level quite well. You can also, as I said, break tasks down into smaller jobs as well. So if you've got one really big important job, you may well want to break them down into smaller jobs that you can do throughout the day, throughout the week, or even over a longer period, because then you're still getting the same amount done, you're still getting that job done, but you're breaking it up over time. I think mentally this can be a lot nicer as well, because sometimes it's natural just to want to get something done and power through, but then if you're spending then the rest of the day or the rest of the week resting and recovering, I think that can have a big impact then on your mental health. Whereas if you've broken it up over a period of time, although it can feel a little bit frustrating at times when you just want to get something done, actually then being able to get to the end of that task and find that you've not overdone it, you've managed your energy well, you're not repaying with a lot of fatigue and pain afterwards, it's then going to be more satisfying because you've still got that done, but in a safe and healthy way for you as well. As I said, do let me know in the comments if you've got any questions. I'll come to them at the end and answer them all in one go then. And do also share any tips and tricks that you found helpful as well, because I'll be able to add them to the blog post if there's anything that I haven't discussed by the end as well. Hopefully we'll help each other with lots of different tips. My next piece of advice is to definitely find a pacing buddy. If you respond well to having support and being able to chat with someone, having someone to talk to can be really, really beneficial. It can be helpful if it's someone who also experiences chronic fatigue, because they can really empathise. But the most important thing is it's someone you're comfortable with and someone you trust. It can also be really helpful to communicate with each other in terms of how you best respond to things. So some people like someone to be quite firm and almost nagging them. Some people would just rather a nice sort of gentle nudge, nice suggestion. So really just think about how well you would respond to things and how you want someone to be communicating with you, and you can discuss that with each other. So for example, I've got a friend who he also has AS and I have AS. And we kind of informally almost just act as each other's pacing buddies. So like the other day I was saying, wow, I've got loads of energy today. I've managed to do this, this and this already. And he went to me, he was like, okay, you've done a lot today already. Yes, you feel good now, but maybe take the rest of the day to rest. And I was like, that's a really good idea, because the back of my mind I was thinking there's a bit of weeding I want to get done in the garden. And really based on how I felt the next day, I had done about the right amount of activity. If I'd gone out and done the weeding, if I hadn't have mentioned anything to him, I may well have then been spending the next day recovering from that and really feeling the after effects. So having someone who's just able to give you that nudge, that friendly kind of non-judgmental reminder, that's really important. It can be really helpful to help you manage those levels, because we're all human. We're all going to overdo it some days. So it's helpful just to have a bit of a backup with someone there just to provide that nudge and support for you. As well, kind of linking into that having a buddy, it is really important to ask for help too. So it's really important, again, communication is key when you're talking with friends and family and loved ones, but it's really important to be able to ask for help and to feel supported as well. In terms of broaching that conversation with people, the best thing to do is pick a day when you're feeling well not a high pain day and not a high fatigue day, because if you're in a lot of pain and you're experiencing a lot of fatigue, it's going to be very difficult to articulate what you're needing. You may also feel more emotional as well and not as clear-headed. So really, if you can, try and pick a day when you're feeling quite well and you're able to have that conversation more easily. And then discuss with them how your symptoms affect you. It's really important as well when someone else doesn't live with a condition like AS, particularly at times it's an invisible condition. It's really important to explain to them that they can't tell from looking at you how you're feeling. So you may well look absolutely fine, but it could be a really high pain day, a really high fatigue day. So it can be helpful both to explain that they can't tell from looking at you, but also to discuss a way that you could possibly have something in place that would act as a little reminder to them, or to notify them how you're feeling that day without you having to say it every single day. So, for example, NASS have on the website silicone wristbands, which are 3 different colours: red, orange and green. So red is for a bad day, orange is for an okay day, and then green is for a good day. So you can just wear the wristband on the day depending on how you're feeling, and then a loved one's going to see that, they're going to have that little nudge. If it's an orange, they may just say, oh, is there anything I can do to help you today? If it's a red, they should know what kind of support you potentially want that day. And it just helps give them that nudge. It helps them it lets them know how you're feeling, but without you actually having to verbalize it all the time. Similarly, I've known some people do have things like on the fridge, they'll just have a similar kind of thing, or smiley face, sort of neutral face and sad face, and they just put a magnet next to whichever one they're feeling that day. And again, it's just a way to let someone know how you're feeling so they can easily know what sort of support they can give you that day, but without you having to talk about it all the time, which I think can be really helpful. And as well, in terms of friends and family and communicating that as well, I think sometimes, particularly with fatigue, it can be useful to use something called the spoon theory. So I'll link to this in the blog post that we'll share on the website afterwards, and I can always pop a link in the comments afterwards as well. But a lady called Christine developed the spoon theory when she was trying to explain to her friend how her chronic fatigue affected her and how it affects what she can do day to day. So they were in a cafe and she gathered loads of spoons from all the surrounding tables and handed them to her friend and said, right, you've got a handful of spoons here. Each spoon represents a bundle of energy. With a chronic illness like AS or ME or chronic fatigue syndrome, you have a limited number of spoons each day. If you don't have one of these conditions, you have infinite spoons, so it's not relevant. But with chronic fatigue, you've got that limited number of energy bundles there. So every time you do an activity, you then give away a spoon because that's that energy spent. So she asked her friend to go through her day and just describe everything she does. And then she'd take away a spoon for each activity. So, sort of get up and get dressed, that's a spoon. Have breakfast, that's a spoon. And as she went through, her friend started to realise towards the end of her sort of hypothetical day, her spoons were running really low. And she was saying, well, really, I'd need to sort of put the kids to bed, I'd need to make dinner, I'd need to do some washing, but I've only got so many spoons. And that's when the penny really dropped, that yes, you do have to look ahead and manage these things, because when you've only got a certain amount of energy, you have to plan ahead for that so that you don't get to the end of the day with lots of things you need to do and you've not got any spoons left. Potentially you can borrow from the next day, but then that means that the next day you're going to start with less spoons. So that when we think back to the boom and bust cycle, that translates into that, where you can do those higher activity days, but then you are going to be borrowing from the next day. So the next day you're going to be resting and recovering more. Ideally, we want to think about the spoons that we have and manage those day to day more evenly, so that you're always using about the right amount, or ending the day even with spare spoons, ideally, so then you're managing things over time. So it can be helpful for us in terms of relating that back to pacing, but also for loved ones, it just gives them that real tangible way of visualizing it, because you can't tell from looking at someone that they're feeling completely exhausted. But actually, if they think through their day and they're thinking, well, I'm giving away a bundle of energy each time I do something, they realise quite what we have to do to help manage things and go about our day-to-day lives. So as I said, I'll share that link with you because Christine explains it in a much better way than I just did. It's well worth reading and sharing with friends and family if you think it will be helpful. And actually, a lot of people really relate to that, and there's a whole community of spoonies online, and lots of people who relate to that. So if you do find that helpful, then search even hashtags like Spoonie and Spoon Theory, and you'll find lots of people using that to help build a community as well, which I think is really helpful. So I'm just going to have a sip of coffee so I don't go too croaky. Let me know in the comments if you've heard of the spoon theory before, or if you haven't. And please do, let me know any questions as we go through, and I'll answer them all at the end. So the next main thing is, it's actually quite a big thing to learn, but it's to not be afraid to say no. So when you're living with chronic fatigue, you really do have to think about the activities that you want to do and that you're able to do, and really not be afraid to say no. Again, with friends and family, it comes back to communicating well, because a lot of the time people find it difficult to say no because they worry about how the other person will take that. But actually, if you communicate well and people really understand fatigue and understand that sometimes there are things that you really want to do but you're not able to do, then that can be really helpful in terms of then being able to say no. So it's just to explain to people that it's not a reflection on them, it's because you do have to say no sometimes, unfortunately. Over time, that will get easier as well. The more that you keep those boundaries and the more that you learn to say no comfortably for your own health and your own benefit, the easier it will be. And also, they even explain to people that it is in their benefits as well, because if you learn to say no and to manage your energy well, it's going to be easier over time to be able to predict how much energy you have and be able to say yes to a lot more things as well. And then the final piece of pacing advice is to plan meals as well. So nutrition and diet and eating well are really important to keep your energy levels up. But obviously, if you get to the end of the day and you're really exhausted, sometimes cooking is the last thing you want to do. So if you have any better days, you can always spend some of that time doing some bulk cooking and either keeping that in the fridge or in the freezer. So then for any days you've got a backup, so you've got some good nutritious meals that will give you that energy boost, but without having to spend the energy actually making them as well. This again, when you're looking at planning your time, planning your weeks or month, anytime when you've got a busy week coming up, try and make time the week before to do some of that bulk cooking, so that you're just taking away one of those things that you have to do, and you're helping keep yourself really nourished and full of energy from the food, without spending that energy doing it. And then, so the next piece of advice, and again, this is going to be a really big topic, which is resting. It can be something that I know a lot of people find frustrating, having to rest, but again, it's something that when you do it in combination with everything else as part of the bigger picture, it does then help you do more gradually over time as well. It's important to know as well, resting doesn't always mean sleeping. So there are lots of different things you can do that are restful, but that don't involve a nap. So things like reading or watching TV or watching a film, doing crafts, you can phone friends and family, having a warm bath or meditating, doing some gentle exercises or breathing exercises. I've put some breathing exercises I've spoken in a previous video you can find on our Facebook page, but also on our website as well in the My AS My Life section. We've got the video, a blog post, and a write-up of lots of different breathing exercises to try. So that can actually be part of your resting, but also it is going to be a nice gentle movement and gentle exercise that's going to help as well with AS too. And it's very relaxing. The more you can relax too, the benefit, the bigger the benefit too. In terms of sleep as well, so sleep is really important. As I said, if you're not sleeping well due to pain or stiffness, then that's going to have a massive impact on your fatigue levels. I have done a whole video and a whole blog post all on sleep and on night pain as well. So again, pop along to that My AS My Life section of the website. I've put a link to that in the description of the video as well, and have a look at that to get some really detailed advice on helping you sleep, because that really will help in terms of energy levels over time and certainly long term. And then exercise, it sounds really counterintuitive, but exercise is really important with managing fatigue. So exercise is helpful both in terms of managing AS long term, so managing the inflammation and reducing the physical effect it has on you, but also it's really important to build your strength and your stamina up. As I said, if you've got any muscle weakness, then that's going to cause a lot of fatigue when you're then going to be more active too. The main thing with exercise, as always, is to start nice and slowly and gradually build up over time as your tolerance and your fitness improves. Again, it can be really easy to overdo it to begin with, so just have that real conscious effort to start small and gradually build up. In terms of doing sort of exercises to begin with, the first thing I'd recommend if you're just starting is every time you go to stand up from an armchair or from a seat, just do a couple of those movements. So stand up and sit down a few times, so that you've got a few of these movements. You're essentially doing squat movements to strengthen your back, your hips and your legs, but you're spreading that out then throughout the day, so you're not having to do one big exercise session and then really recover from it afterwards, you're able to get a few of those movements in throughout the day. So hopefully it's not going to affect your fatigue, but over time that will really build up your strength. And particularly with your leg muscles, that can be really helpful then when you're trying to walk more and be more active. That can have a really big knock-on effect. Also arm movements as well, so using either very light free weights or using tins and just doing general movements, bringing your arms over your head and moving them around can be really helpful for your shoulders and your arms. And then to build up from there, you can then progress to doing press-ups against a wall to help with your upper body, and you can do lunge type movements as well to help with your lower body, unless you have knee problems as well. If you do have any knee problems or any other sort of conditions that affect how much exercise you can do or the type of exercise you can do, then please do get in touch with me, because I can offer lots of free advice through the NASS helpline and also through the email address, and can send through some personalised exercise plans as well. And what I tend to do is I create quite a simple exercise plan to begin with, that's something which should be beneficial but shouldn't flare up symptoms, and then give another plan that then means that as those exercises get easier to do, you've then got something to move on to that's going to build up the intensity of those exercises, so that over time you're going to build your fitness, build your strength, and that can have a huge impact on physical symptoms but also on your fatigue as well. In terms of exercise classes, I think it's really important to discuss how to do that safely. Obviously, at the moment, they're only able to do online classes. If you're new to a class, it's really important to start with a beginner's class, so that you're making sure you're not going to overdo it. And find an instructor, and don't be afraid to ask lots of questions when you're looking for an instructor, to make sure that they really understand AS and they really understand how it affects you individually, so that they're able to give you lots of advice and make sure that you're doing exercises that are going to be helpful, and they'll also should know any exercises you should avoid doing as well to keep yourself safe too. And again, gradually over time, hopefully as things improve, you'll then be able to build up with those intensity of exercises and join the intermediate and advanced classes as well. And then in terms of diet and nutrition, there's no particular diet that has been found to help with fatigue or to really boost fatigue. The main thing that we advise is to have a really well-balanced and nutritious diet. So it's really important to have that well-balanced nutrition. If you have any dietary restrictions, it can be really helpful to speak to your GP or ask for it to be referred to a nutritionist, because you really want to have that more specialised and personalised advice. But in terms of general advice, overeating and undereating can both cause fatigue. And obviously maintaining a healthy weight is very important, because if you're overweight, that may well affect then when you are more active, you can feel more fatigued from that. And also making sure you drink plenty of water, because dehydration can make you feel very tired as well. So the main thing is to make sure you're eating around the right amounts, you're eating regularly throughout the day, and it's well balanced as well. If you do have anemia, if the GP has diagnosed this, then usually they would prescribe iron tablets, and generally they'd give you some diet advice as well, because there are lots of dietary sources of iron. That includes green leafy vegetables, nuts, you can have fortified cereals, meat, liver in particular, but definitely avoid this if you're pregnant, whole grains, cereals that are fortified with iron as well, and dried fruits can be really helpful too. As I said, if you're anemic, the GP will probably prescribe an iron supplement, but it's important for everyone to ensure that you've got plenty of sources of iron in your diet generally. The NHS website as well does have some really good information on vitamins and minerals as well. Again, in the blog post that we'll share on the website afterwards, we go through all of that, and I've got a link to the NHS website there. So that's at the end of kind of the main advice that I'd got to go through. As I said, definitely pop to our website and look for the NASS guide all about fatigue, because it's got a lot of the information I've discussed, and you can go through and, as I said, fill in the activity diary at the back, so that you can help look at areas where you may well need to improve with your pacing. And as I said, do get in touch with us if you then want some advice on how you can make those practical changes as well. So do let me know if you have any questions in the comments. I'll just scroll back up and have a look at what we've got come through. I've got a few people joining. Thank you for everyone for joining. So Sammy asks, how do you cope with the mental side of effects of fatigue? So there's a number of different ways you can cope with that. I think it depends on how you are individually. Some people prefer to have someone to talk to, and some people prefer just reading things online. There's a lot of information online that people sort of blog about AS and blog about fatigue as well. There's a website that's really good, creakyjoints.org. I'll reply to you individually, Sammy, and just pop their website in as a reply to your comment in particular. But they have some really good guest blog posts from people who talk all about fatigue and how they cope mental health wise as well. But I think the main thing is just finding someone that you trust who you can talk to and discuss that with. It can be someone with chronic fatigue, or if you have someone who's really just empathetic and understanding, even if they don't have chronic fatigue, I think that can be really helpful. And of course, we're always available on the helpline as well, Monday to Friday, 10 a.m. till 4 p.m. as well. So if you're struggling, do give us a call. And also there's lots of mental health charities out there who can be really helpful, and lots of them have advice lines. And of course, the Samaritans line is open 24/7, totally confidential as well. It's a non-religious organisation, and they're trained to be able to really listen to you. So if you're particularly struggling, then definitely I recommend getting in touch with the Samaritans if you need. And next question, James asks, James says, good afternoon, Zoe, and to all. Thanks again for the link to the massage balls on Amazon. They arrived today. Oh, great. So in the last video, I spoke about using spiky massage balls to help massage into muscles and help with pain. And James has ordered those. So great. I'm glad they've arrived. I hope you find them helpful. If you want any particular advice on using them, any particular exercises, just get in contact. Similarly for everyone else, if you do find that you get the massage balls or use a tennis ball, but you're not sure what to do with them, then just give us a call or drop me an email. I'll be able to go through, depending on where you get your main symptoms. Manreet says, my first time on here, exhausted this week. I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, as I said, it's natural that some weeks will be a lot worse than others. Hopefully I've provided some advice to help you manage that. But do let me know if you want any particular advice or someone to chat to. Thank you everyone for joining. Jamie says, I shake at night and get restless legs. If you haven't already, I'd definitely recommend speaking to your GP or to your rheumatologist, because there are a number of different possible causes for that, and there can be a lot that they can do to help with that as well. But if you're getting that and it's affecting your sleep, then definitely that will be having a knock-on effect to your energy levels, so I'd definitely get in contact with them. And Tina says, Torocoxib made a huge difference to my sleep and therefore fatigue. That's really, really good to know. In the sleep blog and on the video, I did say with your medications, if you're getting any pain at night, then definitely speak to your pharmacist, your GP or your rheumatologist to look at different options, because different anti-inflammatories work in different ways. And you can also change at what time of day you take them to sometimes help with sleep a little bit more effectively, but that's something a pharmacist will be able to help with. Vine says that fatigue is so difficult to manage. Absolutely, I agree. So hopefully some of that has helped. Absolutely, so Heather says, so interesting and so true, really helpful info on pacing, which actually really works if you can stick to it. Absolutely, it's something, I think it sounds a lot easier than it is. And I know it's something that I don't know anyone who gets it 100% right 100% of the time. So I think actually recognising that and looking at in terms of you can know exactly what to do and you can strive to do that as best as you can, that even when you have those temporary glitches and those occasional glitches where you overdo it, you get that gradual improvement in your ability, in your strength and in your fitness, so that even with those glitches, your worst days sometimes aren't as bad as they were previously. So definitely, if you really stick to it, it can really help. Yeah, Jenny says, pacing myself in my daily activities helps. Absolutely. So that can mean in terms of only doing one high energy activity a day, or it can be breaking down the activities and splitting up the rest periods. It can as well be important to split your rest periods throughout the day, so you're doing very short periods of rest but more frequently. So you can rest every 10 minutes, rest for 10 minutes every hour or so. Not every 10 minutes, you wouldn't get much done then. Yeah, rest for 10 minutes every hour or so, that can be really helpful. And Philip, he dropped to a four-day working week as by Friday and wiped out before COVID-19. Absolutely, that's something that I did. So as an osteopath, my job is very physical. I also got quite a long commute as well. So I worked Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So then I've got a 3-day weekend. But also importantly for me, I found that I had to pace myself through my working day as well. So I know a lot of osteopaths who will work from like 9 a.m. till 7 p.m. and have just a lunch break in the middle, or even some people who don't even have that. But I cannot work like that. So I would have see 2 or 3 patients and have a gap, and then have a rest break. And at most I would see about 8 or 9 people a day. And I know some people see, sort of 12, 15 or so. But when I first started working as an osteopath, before having the AS diagnosis, I was seeing about 2 people, 3 people a day, doing, I think it was two mornings a week, and then gradually doing 3 mornings a week. So actually, as my pacing improved and my stamina improved, I've been able to build that up as well. So that's a bit of a practical and bit of personal experience that shows that pacing really can help. And that's before I was diagnosed on any decent medication as well. Let's see. Anne said, I had forgotten how useful an activity diary is. In the past, it has really helped to see the boom and bust cycle and plan a better way. Thanks for a reminder. Absolutely, Anne. As I said, a lot of times we know what to do, but it's just having that reminder to do it. And also, I think at the moment, during this time when a lot of us are completely out of our routines, completely out of our normal working pattern, now is a really good time to actually assess how you spend your time. You can even look back at how you previously, before real lockdown and shielding and isolation and things, look at how you were spending your time and actually assess. And it might be that now is the time you can make a lot of those big changes so that getting back into work and into an element of normality, however that will look for all of us, you may well be able to make those changes, and then as you're getting back into things, be managing things better. So it might be a good time for a lot of people to make those changes. And James says, pacing myself is great advice as when I go to the gym, I can go overboard on doing so much and fitting everything in, and then I pay for it through a few days after. I need to get it into my head to pace it over multiple sessions. A diary would be a good start with that and helping my AS out. Absolutely. So exercise, as I said, is really important, but it's so easy to do that, where you go and do like one big exercise session, then you spend days recovering. In terms of practical advice, it depends on your own situation. So if you're quite away from the gym, it's not practical to maybe go for shorter sessions more frequently because they can be harder to fit in. But if you're very close to the gym, it can be useful just to go for like a 20-minute session each day, rather than doing an hour session and then having a couple of days resting. Also, if there are any particular movements or machines or anything like that that you find helpful, you may want to get one of those at home so that you can do a little bit of that every day, and then save the other exercises that you can't do from home, save those for the gym, so that then on those sessions you can do them in a shorter amount of time and using less energy as well. But James, as always, if you want any individual advice, want to chat that through, then just let me know. Excuse me. Yeah, Heather says, it's so hard to explain the pain to those you live with. They think on a better day you can manage anything and that the pain has gone. Absolutely. Again, I think part of that comes with it being an invisible condition. And also it depends on when it started for you as well. So if people have known you for many years and then you start getting the symptoms of AS and learning to manage that as well, it can be very difficult for them to get their head around that too, the fact that you have changed and you aren't able to do the same amount. But I think the spoon theory is a really good way of explaining that to people, that even on a good day, you still have that limited number of spoons. So even on a good day, you still need to pace. And actually, on a good day, pacing is all the more important, because otherwise, if you don't pace on those good days, you're going to get more of the bad days as well. So I think definitely have a look at the spoon theory and see if that helps with explaining to people. Terry asks, where can I get the bracelets? They're available on the NASS website, but I'll comment back to you. I'm not sure if they're in stock at the moment, but I will double check. Yeah, Hannah says that this is all new, so having just been diagnosed, the wristband is an amazing idea, as I'm really bad at being honest. Having some people that know what the wristband colours mean is a great idea. Absolutely. So I think especially when you're newly diagnosed, it's going to be very difficult for you to explain how AS affects you, because actually you're still kind of learning yourself. So having that really simple colour-coded thing, and then a few key people who are the ones who are available to offer support and advice, I think that could be really helpful for you. As a newly diagnosed person, do have a look at our website, because we've got loads of information on there. And the new My Life section is all about self-managing. So hopefully we've got some practical tips on there and lots of information to help you understand AS itself. Yeah, Jenny's heard of the spoonies. Abby is struggling to find the booklet on fatigue and the bracelets on the website. I'll drop a link to them. I'll reply to your comment individually, but I'll also pop the link in the description of the video too, so that everyone can just pop to the video description and get that there. Samantha says, some days I feel good, I can run and work out and walk all day, and then other days I feel totally wiped out and need to sleep with absolutely no energy. It makes sense if you do too much, then the day after or so it wears you out. Never heard of the spoon theory before. Absolutely, that's really common, Samantha. So the spoon theory could be really helpful in looking at pacing. I think definitely I would really recommend doing the diary that's in the back of the booklet through here. So you can look at how you're spending your energy, and then look at maybe over the course of a few weeks, you might find that there's a pattern, and you're able to then do some practical things to alter so that you're not going to be getting that boom and bust cycle. Also, it's really important to make sure that your AS is well controlled as well. So if you find that, excuse me, if you find that maybe because you're getting more of those fatigue days, your AS may not be as well controlled, definitely speak to your rheumatologist about that and see if there's any sort of practical tips they can give for that as well. And do give us a call if you need any advice. Yeah, and Heather's asking about having a NASS session on nutrition and inflammation. Absolutely. As an osteopath, nutrition is not my area of expertise, but I definitely think we could get someone in to have a chat about that. And Manreed asks about a gluten-free diet to help inflammation. Generally, unless you have a gluten intolerance or allergy, or you have celiac disease, there's not really any real evidence in terms of gluten-free diet for everyone with AS being helpful. Manreed's also asking about a vegan diet, whether that's beneficial. It's very individual, so I'd recommend, if you're considering trying any of these, I'd recommend speaking to a nutritionist, particularly someone with experience with AS and inflammation, just to make sure you're sort of making the right choices and still getting the right nutrients as well. Yeah, and Vanessa says that amitriptyline has helped sleep and pain and has increased energy levels. Absolutely, that can be really helpful. And as soon as you get a better night's sleep, that's going to have a knock-on effect to your energy. Amitriptyline in particular is one of those medications that can cause drowsiness afterwards. So if someone is on something like amitriptyline or gabapentin, that's something to speak to a pharmacist about, who may be able to give an idea of when in the day to take it, to then hopefully not get that sleepiness in the morning afterwards. Robert asks, hi Zoe, I'm currently at home with uveitis and migraine cycle causing fatigue. Any tips to break the migraine cycle? Migraines, there are loads of different causes of migraines. So Robert, if you could get in contact with me, if you drop me an email, zoe@nass.co.uk, and we can have a chat. I can either arrange a time to give you a call, or we can just chat through email, and I'll be able to get to the bottom of what's causing the migraines, and then hopefully give you some advice on getting those to stop there. David says, hi, I never really suffered with fatigue until a few years back, but now I find it hard to do fairly basic tasks, but other days I can do everything. I think your advice is very good, but very hard to accept. Absolutely, and I think pacing in particular is one of those things that it comes with acceptance of the condition too. I think in the early days of diagnosis, it's harder almost to pace, because it isn't, you're still in that process of accepting that you've got that long-term condition. Again, it links back to the kind of the mental health aspect of AS too. So it's well worth finding someone you can speak to. Lots of people find counselling and CBT very helpful as well. So it may be something that helps in terms of that acceptance process, and also sort of feeling better mentally about it as well. Let's have a look. Okay, Terry commented that my rheumatologist told me that my fatigue had nothing to do with AS, making me feel like I'm crazy. I'm sorry to hear that. Absolutely, fatigue is a very common symptom that comes alongside with AS. Obviously, without knowing an individual situation, it may be that they felt that there may be another cause of the fatigue, like, as I said, anemia and other things like that. And it can be that if the AS isn't very active, then fatigue is less likely to happen. But it's well worth discussing with them and just checking, so getting clarity on exactly what they meant by that. But certainly, in terms of symptoms that come alongside with AS, fatigue is a very big one, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. If you'd like any exercise advice, then do get in contact with me and I can put together a personalised plan. So Joanna asks, new to the site, hi Zoe, I'm having trouble getting diagnosed. I have the gene and CRP has been above 20. Rheumatology saw me once over 3 years ago and refused to see me after 3 more requests. Can't work now. Can't walk more than short distances. Lower back pain. I have constant blood tests and cortisone shots. Also a lot of addictive painkillers. I do aqua once a week and swim another day in the week. My sister has AS. It took 4 years for her to get diagnosed. Who should I turn to? My mental health is suffering. I'm really sorry to hear that, Joanna. Please do give our helpline a call. I've popped the number and our hours in the description of the video, but have a chat with one of us and we'll be able to give you some advice, definitely. There's lots of advice we can give for that, so hopefully we can help with that. Yeah, and Anne comments that you can ask GP for a referral to get a second opinion. It's patient's choice. That's absolutely right. Oh, thank you, Sally. Sally's replied to Joanna already, and to Terry. That's brilliant. Right, so I've reached the end of the comments there. If anybody has any other questions, feel free to pop them in there now and I can answer them. But if not, as I said, feel free to email me, zoe@nass.co.uk, or give us a call on the helpline if you'd like any advice or support. And do let us know if there are any particular topics you'd like. So I'll definitely add to our topic list nutrition and diet. That would be a really good thing to cover. Our next planned live, we've got the event on the Facebook page already. So if you follow the event, you'll get a notification about it. That's next Wednesday, the 10th it is? Yep, 10th at 1 p.m. I'll be talking all about exercising to help manage your AS, especially during COVID-19 and when we're shielding and isolating a lot more as well. So I'll be going through how you can be exercising at home, both in terms of for AS in particular, but also for your cardiovascular health and your strength as well. So yeah, hopefully that is all covered everyone's questions. Please do get in contact if you need to. Thank you very much for joining, and hopefully I'll see you next week.